I want you to recall the most vivid memory you have, a moment so clear you'd bet your life on every detail. Now, what if I told you there's a 50% chance that memory is a total fabrication? Not fuzzy, not slightly off, completely wrong. You don't believe me. Of course you don't. That memory feels real. You can see it, smell it. Feel the emotion rising in your chest right now just thinking about it. And that's exactly the problem. Your brain has been lying to you your entire life. And the more confident you feel about a memory, the more dangerous that lie becomes. Let me tell you about a woman who discovered this the hard way. In 1986, psychologist Ulrich Neisser ran an experiment. The day after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, he asked his students to write down exactly where they were when they heard the news. What they were doing, who told them, every detail they could remember. Then he waited. 3 years. When he brought those same students back and asked them to recall that day again, something disturbing happened. 25% of them got every single detail wrong. Not one thing matched their original written account. But here's the part that should keep you up at night. One woman looked at her own handwriting, the account she'd written the very next day, and said, "I know it's my handwriting, but I couldn't have written this." She was staring at proof, undeniable physical proof that her memory was wrong, and her brain still refused to accept it. That's not a glitch. That's not a one-time error. That's how your mind works. Right now, every single day. You're not remembering the past. You're reconstructing it. Every time you access a memory, your brain pulls it apart and rebuilds it with whatever makes sense today. Your current beliefs, your current emotions, your current identity. The memory changes, and you never notice. The vividness you feel, that certainty that floods your body when you recall something important, it means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Your most treasured memories might be fiction. The argument you're sure you won? You might have lost it. The promise someone made? They might never have said it. And here's what makes this truly unsettling. If you can't trust your own memory, the very foundation of who you believe yourself to be, what exactly can you trust? That question is about to get a lot more uncomfortable. Because there's a specific type of memory your brain treats as sacred, untouchable, beyond doubt. And it turns out those memories are the most corrupted of all. You remember exactly where you were. The moment burned into your brain like a photograph. Every detail, the room, the light, the words someone said. Crystal clear. Absolutely certain. And absolutely wrong. Here's what the research actually showed. Neisser's students wrote down their memories of the Challenger disaster the day after it happened. 2.5 years later, he asked them again. These were the memories people described as vivid, unshakable, the kind they'd stake their reputation on. Half of those accounts were wrong in 2/3 of their details. Half the story, half the experience. Gone. But here's the part that should make you pause. 25% of the recollections didn't match a single original detail. Not one. The room was different. The people were different. The entire experience had been rewritten. And when researchers showed these people their own handwritten accounts from the day after it happened, their own words, their own ink, they refused to believe it. "That's my handwriting," they said. But that's not how it happened. Your brain didn't just make an error. It created a false certainty so complete that evidence couldn't touch it. Think about the memories you carry, the ones that shaped you, your first heartbreak, The moment you realized your parents were flawed, the conversation that changed everything. How many of those are real? Not real in the sense that something happened, something did, but real in the way you remember it. The words, the expressions, the meaning you assigned to that moment. Your identity is built on memories. Your sense of who you are, who hurt you, who loved you, what you survived, all of it lives in recollection. And if those recollections are reconstructions, edited and rewritten every time you access them, then who are you, really? This isn't about having a bad memory. This is about your brain generating false confidence, creating certainty where none exists, making you feel like you know, absolutely know, something that never happened the way you remember it. And that pattern doesn't stop at memory. The same machinery that rewrites your past is running right now, in this moment, processing everything you see, hear, and experience through filters you can't detect. Your brain isn't just misremembering the past, it's misprocessing the present. Your brain just lied to you, and you didn't even notice. Here's a simple question. Take a standard piece of paper, fold it in half. Now fold it again. Keep folding. 50 times total. How thick would that paper be? Go ahead. Take a guess. A few feet? Maybe as tall as a building? Some people say a mile. The actual answer, 60 million miles. That's the distance from Earth to the Sun. Let that sink in. A piece of paper, folded 50 times, would stretch from here to the center of our solar system. And your brain, your incredibly sophisticated brain, couldn't even get close. This isn't a trick. It's not a riddle with a clever twist. It's pure mathematics. Each fold doubles the thickness. 2 becomes 4. 4 becomes 8. By fold 50, you're dealing with numbers your mind literally cannot process. Here's what just happened inside your head. You took the information, 50 folds, and your brain tried to imagine it. It pictured folding paper. It thought about stacking pages. And it gave you an answer that felt reasonable. But reasonable is the problem. Your mind thinks in straight lines. Add 1, get 1 more. Walk 10 steps, cover 10 steps of distance. This is linear thinking. It kept your ancestors alive. But exponential growth? Doubling and doubling again? Your brain treats it like a foreign language it never learned to speak. And this blindness is running your life right now. Think about your retirement account. That 7% annual return doesn't feel like much. A few $100 here, maybe 1,000 there. Your brain yawns, but compound interest works exactly like that paper fold, money doubling on itself, year after year. The difference between starting at 25 versus 35 isn't 10 years of savings. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions. Your brain can't feel that, so you don't act on it. This same blindness showed up in early 2020. A virus doubling every few days, experts screaming warnings, and most people shrugging, because a few hundred cases didn't feel dangerous. By the time it felt dangerous, hospitals were overwhelmed. Technology moves this way too. Computing power, artificial intelligence. The changes coming in the next decade will dwarf the last 50 years combined. And your linear brain keeps expecting tomorrow to look like yesterday. You're making decisions right now about money, about career, about the future, using a mind that cannot comprehend the forces shaping your world. And here's where this connects to something even more unsettling. Because this gap between what you think you'll do and what you actually do, it gets worse when emotions enter the picture. You made a promise to yourself. Maybe it was last January. Maybe it was last night. You were calm, clear-headed, absolutely certain this time would be different. No more late-night snacking, no more angry texts, no more saying yes when you mean no. And then something shifted. The craving hit. The emotion flooded in. And that promise? It evaporated like it never existed. Here's what nobody told you. The person who made that promise and the person who broke it, they're not the same person. This isn't metaphor. This isn't poetry. This is how your brain actually works. Psychologists call it the hot-cold empathy gap. And it explains every broken resolution, every regret, every moment you've looked back and thought, who was that? Picture this. It's Sunday evening. You're relaxed, full from dinner, feeling good. You decide tomorrow starts the new routine. Early wake-up, healthy breakfast, no distractions. The cold version of you made that plan. Rational, collected, completely disconnected from what it feels like to be exhausted, hungry, stressed, or desperate. Then Monday morning arrives. The alarm screams. You're tired, actually tired. The bed is warm, the world is cold. And that plan you made, it was designed by someone who had no idea what this moment would feel like. The hot version of you takes over. And here's the devastating part. Your cold self cannot imagine what your hot self will do. It's not a failure of discipline. It's a failure of prediction. You're essentially two different people sharing one body, and they've never met. George Lowenstein, the researcher who named this phenomenon, found something uncomfortable. When people are calm, they dramatically underestimate how much pain, hunger, fear, or desire will change their decisions. It's not a small gap. It's a canyon. Think about the last time you said something you regretted in anger. The cold version of you, the one apologizing hours later, genuinely cannot understand how those words came out of your mouth, because they didn't come from you, not the you that's reflecting now. This is why willpower fails. You're not weak. You're making plans for a stranger. Every diet abandoned at midnight. Every budget broken in a moment of stress. Every relationship promise shattered in the heat of an argument. Same pattern. Same gap. And the cruelest part? Your cold self keeps making promises your hot self will never keep. Over and over. Convinced that this time, somehow, things will be different. But here's where this cognitive bias gets even more frustrating. Researchers didn't just observe this gap. They measured exactly how far it goes, and what they found changes everything about how you should think about your own decisions. You think you know yourself. You think you know what you'd never do, what lines you'd never cross. You're wrong. Researcher Dan Ariely wanted to test something uncomfortable. He wanted to know if people could accurately predict their own behavior, specifically their behavior under intense desire. What he found shattered the idea that we truly understand ourselves. Here's what happened. Ariely gathered a group of young men. In a calm, rational state, what researchers call a cold state, he asked them a series of questions about choices they would and wouldn't make. The answers were exactly what you'd expect. No, absolutely not. Never. These weren't bad people. They were confident. They were certain. They knew who they were. Then Ariely did something different. He asked the same questions again. But this time, participants were in a state of high emotional arousal. The results weren't just different. They were unrecognizable. The willingness to engage in behavior they'd previously ruled out didn't shift by 10 or 20%. It doubled, sometimes tripled. These same men, who had sworn they would never cross certain lines, suddenly became people their rational selves couldn't recognize. And here's the part that should unsettle you. These participants weren't lying in their first answers. They genuinely believed they knew themselves. They had complete confidence in their predictions. They were completely wrong. Picture this. You're calm right now, reading this, thinking clearly. And if I asked you what you'd do under pressure, under hunger, under rage, under desire, you'd give me an answer with total certainty. But that answer comes from a mind that has never experienced the state it's trying to predict. You're a stranger to yourself in those moments, and you don't know it until you're already there. This is the empathy gap at its most dangerous. Not just failing to understand others, failing to understand the future version of you that exists in emotional extremes. How many decisions have you made, assuming you'd stay rational? How many commitments have you broken because the person who made them wasn't the person who had to keep them? Do you really know what you're capable of? Because here's what gets even more uncomfortable. This gap doesn't just affect your choices in heated moments. It affects something you rely on every single day, your ability to follow through. You know exactly what you need to do. The deadline is weeks away. You have all the time in the world. And that's precisely why you won't start. Your future self will handle it. Future you is disciplined, focused, somehow immune to distraction and the gravitational pull of your phone. Future you is a superhero. Present you? Present you is doomsday scrolling. Here's what nobody tells you about procrastination. It's not laziness. It's not a character flaw. It's your cold self making promises your hot self has no intention of keeping. Picture this. It's Sunday night. You're planning your week. Tomorrow you'll wake up at 6, hit the gym, start that project early. You can see it so clearly. The productive, capable version of yourself sailing through the week. Then Monday morning arrives. The alarm screams. And suddenly, that plan feels like it was made by a stranger. Because it was. Cold you made promises. Hot you. Tired, groggy, wrapped in warm blankets. Couldn't care less about those promises. Researchers ran a fascinating experiment. They gave students a choice. Submit 3 papers with strict deadlines spread throughout the semester. Or choose your own deadlines. Complete freedom. Now, logically, the freedom group should perform better. They can optimize. Work when inspiration strikes. Adapt to their schedule. They performed worse, significantly worse. The students who chose their own deadlines procrastinated more, turned in lower quality work, and reported more stress. Freedom didn't liberate them. It crushed them. Here's why. When someone else sets a deadline, your hot self has no negotiating power. The constraint is external, immovable, real, but a self-imposed deadline, your hot self knows the truth. You made that deadline. You can unmake it. Just this once. You'll catch up tomorrow. You won't catch up tomorrow. This is the procrastination trap. Your cold self genuinely believes it can control your future behavior through willpower alone. It can't. Willpower is a cold state fantasy. Think about your own patterns. How many times have you set a personal deadline and actually kept it? How many morning routines have you planned that dissolved by Wednesday? Your mind isn't broken. It's predictable. The cold self makes plans. The hot self ignores them every single time. But here's where this gets even more uncomfortable. Because that freedom you crave, the autonomy you think will make you more productive, more creative, more fulfilled, it might be the very thing holding you back. You love freedom. You crave it. The ability to do things on your own terms, in your own time, with no one breathing down your neck. And that freedom? It's destroying your results. A professor ran an experiment on 3 different classes. Same course, Same papers, same students. The only difference was the deadlines. The first class got strict, non-negotiable deadlines. Papers due at specific dates. No flexibility, no excuses. The second class got complete freedom. Turn in all 3 papers whenever you want, as long as they're submitted by the end of the semester. Total autonomy. The third class fell in the middle. Students set their own deadlines at the beginning of the course. Once chosen, those deadlines were binding. Which group do you think performed best? If you're like most people, you'd bet on freedom. More time means better work, right? Flexibility lets you write when inspiration strikes. Here's what happened. The class with complete freedom, the one with maximum autonomy, produced the worst grades. Not by a small margin, significantly worse. The class with strict external deadlines, best performance across the board, and the middle group, the ones who set their own constraints. They did better than the freedom group, but still couldn't match the externally imposed structure. Let that sink in. When given total freedom, students procrastinated until the end, crammed 3 papers into the final weeks, and produced mediocre work under maximum stress. The freedom they wanted became the trap that caught them. Self-imposed deadlines work better than no deadlines, but they still can't compete with constraints someone else sets for you. Your brain knows your own rules are flexible. You made them. You can unmake them. That escape hatch exists, and your mind never forgets it's there. External deadlines feel different. They're immovable, non-negotiable. Your brain stops looking for exits and starts looking for solutions. Now think about your own life. Where do you have complete freedom right now? That side project with no due date? That health goal with no accountability? That skill you've been meaning to develop when you have time? How long have those been sitting there? The pattern is running right now. Every area of your life with maximum autonomy is probably your area of maximum stagnation. You don't need more freedom. You need strategic constraints. But here's where this gets even more unsettling. Because your brain isn't just bad at handling freedom, it's actively working to protect you from the truth about your own failures. And the mechanism it uses? That's something far more dangerous than procrastination. You just made a mistake. A real one. The kind that cost you something. Money, time, maybe someone's trust. And within seconds, your mind started working. Not to fix it, to explain it away. It wasn't really my fault. Anyone would have done the same thing. Actually, it might turn out to be a good thing. Sound familiar? This is your rationalization engine, and it never stops running. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Your brain holds a belief about who you are. Smart, capable, reasonable. Then you do something that contradicts that belief. You make a choice that doesn't fit the story. Now you have 2 conflicting ideas in your head at once. I'm intelligent, and I just did something foolish. That collision creates real psychological pain. Researchers call it cognitive dissonance, and your mind will do almost anything to make it stop. But here's the twist. It rarely resolves the conflict by admitting the mistake. Instead, it rewrites the story. You know the fable of the fox and the sour grapes. The fox can't reach the grapes, so instead of accepting failure, he decides they were probably sour anyway. He didn't fail. He just didn't want them. You do this constantly. The job you didn't get? It would have been too stressful anyway. The relationship that ended? We weren't right for each other. The investment that tanked? It was a learning experience. Notice how none of those require you to be wrong. Your ego stays protected. Your self-image remains intact. And that's the trap. Because if you rationalize every error, you never learn from one. The feedback loop that should make you wiser gets short-circuited. You keep making the same mistakes, dressed up in different justifications. Picture this. David spent 3 years building a business that never turned profitable. Every quarter, he had an explanation. The market wasn't ready. His partners weren't committed. The timing was off. When it finally collapsed, he told himself it was the economy. Not once did he consider that his fundamental strategy was flawed. And 2 years later, he started another business with the same approach. The Rationalization Engine had protected him from the one insight that could have changed everything. This is running in your life right now. Those decisions you've defended, those outcomes you've reframed. Every time you change the story, instead of changing yourself, the engine wins. But here's where this gets specific and uncomfortable, because there's one area where rationalization causes the most damage, where the stakes are highest and the self-deception runs deepest. Your money. You bought the car, signed the papers, drove it off the lot, and within the first week, you noticed it. The engine, it's loud, not powerful loud, just loud. The seats? Stiff, uncomfortable, not what you remembered from the test drive. That sinking feeling starts to creep in. You made a mistake. You spent thousands of dollars on something worse than what you had before. But here's where something fascinating happens. Your brain refuses to accept this. It can't. Because admitting you made a bad decision threatens something far more precious than money. It threatens your identity as someone who makes good choices. So your mind does what it does best. It lies to you. Suddenly, that loud engine isn't a flaw anymore. It's a safety feature. You can hear it clearly, which means you'll never fall asleep at the wheel. Those stiff seats? Actually better for your posture. You were getting too comfortable in that old car anyway. Watch what just happened. Your brain took objective problems and turned them into virtues. Not through logic, through desperation. This is confirmation bias in its purest form. Your mind isn't seeking truth. It's seeking evidence to support the decision you already made. And it will find that evidence everywhere, in every review that praises the car, in every friend who says, "Nice ride." In every morning you convince yourself the engine sounds sporty. The information that contradicts your choice, it becomes invisible. That article about reliability issues? You scrolled past it. Your neighbor's comment about better options? You forgot it immediately. Picture this playing out over months. Every time you get into that car, you reinforce the story. The loud engine means safety. The stiff seats mean support. The high price means quality. Eventually, you're not even lying to yourself anymore. You believe it. Completely. And here's the uncomfortable question. What loud engines in your life are you calling safety features right now? That relationship that exhausts you, but you've convinced yourself the drama keeps things passionate? That job that underpays you, but you've decided the stress builds character? That habit you can't quit, but you've reframed as self-care? Your brain is doing this constantly, taking the flaws in your choices and polishing them until they shine like virtues. Not because it's evil, because admitting mistakes feels like dying. But here's where this connects to something even more dangerous. Because confirmation bias doesn't just protect your past decisions, it shapes how you see people. And that distortion, it can destroy relationships before they even begin. You think you know the people in your life, your partner, your co-worker, your best friend. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't see them at all. You see a story your brain invented. and you've been living inside that story for years. This is the halo effect, and it's distorting every relationship you have. Here's how it works. Someone does one thing you admire. Maybe they're attractive. Maybe they're funny. Maybe they helped you once when you needed it. And your brain takes that single trait and paints their entire personality with it. Suddenly they're not just attractive. They're smart. They're trustworthy. They're kind. Your brain fills in the blanks with qualities they never demonstrated. You're not evaluating them anymore. You're projecting a character onto them. Picture this. Sarah meets David at a party. He makes her laugh. He's charming, confident. 3 months later, she's ignoring the fact that he cancels plans constantly, that he dismisses her feelings, that her friends keep asking if she's okay. But David made her laugh that first night. So David must be a good person. The halo blinds her to everything else. Sound familiar? Now flip it. The horns effect. Someone does one thing you dislike. They're awkward. They disagree with you publicly. They have a habit that irritates you. And now, everything they do is filtered through that lens. Their good ideas become suspicious. Their kindness becomes manipulation. You've decided who they are, and you'll find evidence to prove it everywhere you look. Here's the part that should disturb you. Researchers discovered something chilling. Expectations don't just affect how you see people. They affect how those people behave around you. When you expect someone to be incompetent, you treat them differently. Subtle cues, tone of voice, body language, and they pick up on it, often unconsciously. They become more nervous, less confident. They perform worse. You created the evidence for your own bias. Think about that. The person you've written off at work, the family member you've decided is impossible. How much of their behavior is genuinely them, and how much is their response to the story you're projecting onto them? This isn't about being nicer. This is about recognizing that your brain builds characters out of fragments. One good moment, one bad impression, and then defends that character like it's objective truth. The people you love? You're not seeing them clearly. The people you've dismissed? You never gave them a chance. But here's where this pattern becomes truly dangerous. Because there's a bias that takes these distortions and makes them nearly impossible to escape. So now you know. You've seen the patterns, the hot-cold empathy gap, the way your mind distorts relationships, how rationalization protects your ego before you even notice it happening. And right now, part of your brain is making a promise. Now that I understand this, I'll just stop doing it. Sound familiar? Here's the uncomfortable truth. That promise, it's the biggest trap of all. Because awareness doesn't equal control. Think about it. You know junk food is bad for you. You understand exactly how sugar affects your body, how processed foods drain your energy, how that late-night snack will make you feel terrible tomorrow. And yet, you've eaten the thing anyway, knowing full well what you were doing, watching yourself do it. That's not a failure of knowledge. That's your brain operating exactly as designed. Picture this. A researcher brings participants into a lab and explains confirmation bias in detail, shows them examples, tests them to make sure they understand the concept completely, then gives them a task specifically designed to trigger confirmation bias. You'd think knowing about the trap would help them avoid it. It didn't. They fell for it anyway. Just as hard as people who'd never heard of it. Knowing the name of your prison doesn't unlock the door. Your irrationality isn't random. That's what makes it so dangerous. It's systematic, predictable. Your brain makes the same mistakes in the same situations over and over again. And trying harder isn't the solution. Willpower is a resource that depletes. Motivation fluctuates. Good intentions evaporate the moment emotion floods your system. Remember the procrastination research? Students who had deadlines imposed on them outperformed students who set their own. Not because they were smarter. Not because they wanted it more. Because they had better systems. The students who failed knew procrastination was a problem. They understood the consequences. They promised themselves they'd do better. And then their brains did what brains do. The solution isn't knowing more. It's designing around your limitations. External accountability. Environmental triggers. Removing choices before your emotional brain gets a vote. You can't think your way out of a thinking problem. This is where most people stop. They learn about cognitive biases, feel enlightened for a moment, then go right back to making the same mistakes with slightly better vocabulary to describe them. But there's another path. One that doesn't rely on willpower or good intentions or promises you'll break. And it starts with accepting something most people never will. You've seen it now. All of it. Your memory rewrites itself every time you access it. Your brain can't process exponential growth. Your future self feels like a stranger, and your ego will rationalize almost anything to protect itself. This isn't a flaw. This is the operating system you were born with. Think about what that means. Every argument you've had where you were absolutely certain you were right. Every time you wondered why someone couldn't just see the obvious truth. Every moment you judged yourself for a decision that seemed so clear in hindsight. You were running the same software they were, the same software everyone is. And here's what changes now. The next time you feel that surge of certainty, that unshakable conviction that you remember exactly what happened, you'll pause. You'll wonder. Not because you're weak, because you're aware. The next time someone close to you makes a decision that seems obviously wrong, you'll recognize the gap. They're in a different state than you are. They're seeing different data. And their mind is protecting them the same way yours protects you. This isn't about becoming uncertain about everything. That's paralysis, not wisdom. It's about holding your certainties a little more loosely. It's about building systems instead of relying on willpower. It's about understanding that the person you'll be in 5 years is genuinely different from who you are today, and planning for that stranger with compassion. Most people will never see these patterns. They'll spend their entire lives reacting to a world their brain constructed, convinced it's reality, convinced everyone else is the problem. You can't go back to that. And that's not a burden. That's freedom. The patterns will still run. Your memory will still edit itself. Your ego will still whisper justifications. The hot-cold gap will still catch you off guard. But now you'll recognize the moment it's happening. Now you'll have a choice you never had before. That quiet awareness, that split second of recognition before you react, that's where everything begins to shift. Not through force, not through willpower, through seeing clearly what was always there. You've earned something most people never find. Use it gently. On yourself first, then on everyone around you. But here's what I need you to understand. Everything we've covered, memory, prediction, rationalization, these are patterns that run inside your own head. There's another pattern, one that doesn't come from within, one that comes from everyone around you. And it's far more dangerous because you can't see it operating at all. It's called social proof, and it might be controlling more of your life than everything else combined.